Daniel M. sat silently on the weathered bench outside the barracks, his gaze fixed on the endless stretch of desert before him. The sun blazed overhead, turning the sand into a shimmering sea of gold and orange. Despite the intense heat, over 40 degrees Celsius, a strange chill crept along Daniel's spine, an uneasy feeling that seemed completely out of place in this burning landscape. At 28 years old, Daniel was a seasoned soldier. He had served in infantry units, deployed to multiple conflict zones around the world. Yet, nothing had prepared him for the strange atmosphere that greeted him upon arrival at Al-Haima. Al-Haima was no ordinary military outpost. Originally built as a field hospital during the fierce desert wars of the 1980s, the compound had lain abandoned for 23 years. Recently, the military command had repurposed it as an observation post on the desert's edge. The walls were cracked, paint peeling, and windows shattered or boarded up. The air carried a musty, heavy scent, the smell of decay and forgotten memories. Daniel had barely stepped foot inside when he sensed something was wrong. The soldiers who had been stationed there warned him quietly, "If you get assigned to the East Building, stay away from room 3. A grizzled sergeant told him with a serious tone. Daniel laughed it off as an old superstition or a joke meant to scare newcomers. But the same warning echoed from several others, seasoned soldiers who spoke with an uneasy respect. Each time the words sank into Daniel's mind like a seed of doubt. That evening, Daniel settled into his assigned sleeping quarters, a small room in the main barracks shared by 4 men. The concrete walls were bare, and the thin mattress offered little comfort. Outside, the desert winds whispered, carrying the dry sand like tiny ghosts swirling through the air. Despite the exhaustion from travel and heat, Daniel found himself wide awake, staring at the ceiling. He tried to shake off the strange sensation, gripping him a coldness that seemed to seep into his bones. The contrast of the blazing desert and the freezing chill inside the base felt like a contradiction. Impossible to explain. Suddenly, a sound shattered the stillness. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. They echoed through the hallway outside his door, growing louder and then fading away. Daniel's heart thudded in his chest. Peering through the cracked door, he caught a glimpse of a figure passing by the small window, dressed in a white coat that fluttered like a spectre. The figure moved swiftly, silently, vanishing into the darkness. Daniel grabbed his flashlight and bolted into the corridor. His beam swept through the empty hallway, but no one was there. The only sound was the faint hum of the desert night. Was it his imagination, or something else? The next day, during a meal in the mess hall, Daniel sat next to Corporal Reyes, a veteran with a weathered face and eyes that seemed to carry years of burden. Daniel mentioned the mysterious figure. "That's the white nurse," Reyes said quietly, almost as if afraid to speak louder. "She's a ghost, a nurse who died here years ago, still searching for her patients. Some say she's cursed. Anyone who sees her, well, they're marked." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You don't really believe that, do you?" Reyes shrugged, but his eyes didn't meet Daniel's. "I've seen things you wouldn't believe. The stories might sound crazy, but this place, it's different." Daniel nodded but tried to keep his mind rational. The desert heat was getting to them all. He decided to focus on his duties and not dwell on ghost stories. But deep inside, the warnings echoed louder than ever. The days passed slowly at Al-Haima. The sun rose mercilessly each morning, baking the desert sands and turning the once proud military base into a ghostly skeleton. Despite the harsh conditions, Daniel threw himself into his routine, determined not to let the strange stories or the eerie atmosphere get under his skin. But at night, when the heat finally faded and the desert grew quiet, Daniel's mind betrayed him. On his very first night, he was awakened by a faint noise, the slow, heavy footsteps of someone walking down the hallway outside the barracks. The sound was deliberate, almost measured. Daniel sat up on his cot, straining to listen. The footsteps stopped just beyond the door, then receded down the hall until they vanished completely. He told himself it was one of the other soldiers moving about, but when he checked, the hall was empty. The only sound the whispering wind against cracked walls. The next day, Daniel found himself drawn toward the East Building, the very place he had been warned to avoid, especially room 3. Curiosity gnawed at him though, logic screamed to stay away. Peeking through a broken window, he caught sight of something that made his blood run cold. For a brief moment, a figure in a white coat passed by, slender, ghostly pale, slipping silently into the shadows. When Daniel tried to get closer, there was nothing but dust and silence. That evening, in the mess hall, Daniel listened as a senior soldier shared a chilling tale. The white nurse, the soldier, began lowering his voice. She was Layla Hassan, a nurse stationed here during the war. They say she was trying to save her patients when the East Building was hit. Hit? Daniel asked. A sudden bombardment, the soldier replied grimly. The whole building collapsed with wounded soldiers trapped inside. Layla died in the rubble, but some say her spirit never left. Daniel's mind raced as the soldier continued. People who have been posted here speak of hearing her footsteps, seeing her wandering halls. Sometimes she appears at night, searching for the men she couldn't save. That night, Daniel's dreams were haunted. In the darkness of sleep, he stood inside room 3, a cold, sterile space lined with rows of hospital beds covered with white sheets, stained dark with blood. The air was thick and heavy, a strange mix of antiseptic and decay. He could hear soft moans and whispers, the faint sounds of suffering from unseen patients. A woman in a nurse's uniform drifted silently among the beds. Her face was pale, eyes wide with sorrow and fear. "Help us," she whispered, her voice barely audible, like a distant echo. Daniel woke with a start, heart pounding and sweat slicking his skin. The room around him was still and silent, but the feeling of dread lingered. Over the next few nights, the strange occurrences increased. Lights flickered unpredictably in the east. Building shadows moved just beyond the edge of vision. Whispers, too soft to understand, brushed past his ears when he was alone. Daniel found himself drawn repeatedly to the edge of the East Building, feeling an invisible pull toward room 3. Despite the warnings, he couldn't resist. What was this place hiding, and why did it feel like the past was bleeding into the present? Daniel knew one thing for sure. This mission was going to be far darker than he ever imagined. 2 hours before midnight, the desert sun had long since vanished beyond the dunes, leaving the Al-Haima base wrapped in an eerie twilight. Daniel checked his watch. 1:58 a.m. soon, his shift guarding the East Building would begin. The place everyone warned him to avoid. Despite the unease that had settled deep in his chest, Daniel forced himself to focus. He was a soldier, after all. Ghost stories and legends were distractions he couldn't afford. He took a deep breath and steeled his nerves. At exactly 2 a.m., Daniel grabbed his flashlight and headed toward the East Building. The air was colder here, an unnatural chill biting into his skin despite the desert heat outside. The walls of the building loomed ahead, worn, scarred by time and neglect. His orders were clear: patrol the halls between 2 and 4 a.m., and report anything unusual. Daniel's footsteps echoed on the cracked concrete floors as he moved through the dim corridors. The only light came from his flickering flashlight and the weak moonlight filtering through broken windows. At first, everything seemed silent. No creaks, no whispers, just the sound of his own breath and footsteps. Suddenly, he heard it, a faint whisper, carried on the stale air. It was in English, but with a strange accent that made the words sound distorted. "You're not supposed to be here. ... double quotes. Daniel froze. The voice seemed to circle him, repeated softly, like a chant. He scanned the hallway, trying to locate the source. His flashlight beam landed on the doorway of room 3, the very room he had been warned about. The door was slightly ajar, creaking as it swayed in the faint breeze. Compelled by a mix of fear and curiosity, Daniel pushed the door open and stepped. Inside, the air was thick, heavy with the scent of antiseptic and something metallic. Blood. His flashlight flickered violently, casting shifting shadows on the peeling walls. At the far end of the room stood a figure dressed in a white nurse's coat. The figure's back was to Daniel, but as his light hit it, the head turned slowly, unnaturally slow. The head twisted 180 degrees while the body remained still, revealing a face impossible to forget. Pale, almost translucent skin stretched tightly over hollow cheeks. The eyes were milky white, devoid of pupils, staring straight at Daniel. Her mouth was torn into a gruesome, jagged smile stretching from ear to ear. Her voice, dry and hollow, rasped out, "Leave, before it's too late." Daniel stumbled backward, heart hammering, unable to tear his eyes away. He blinked hands suddenly. The room was empty, no figure, no blood scent, only the cold, sterile silence. He was alone. Shaken, Daniel fled the East Building and didn't stop running until he was back among the other soldiers. He kept trying to convince himself it was a hallucination, a trick of his mind. But deep down, he knew something terrible lurked in room 3, and that the white nurse was watching. After the terrifying encounter in room 3, Daniel could no longer dismiss the warnings as mere superstition. Determined to understand the strange occurrences, he decided to investigate the history of Al-Haima and the East Building. The base's main library was a dusty, neglected room, lined with aging shelves packed with faded documents, manuals, and old reports. Few soldiers visited this place anymore, preferring digital devices and briefings. But for Daniel, it became a sanctuary, a place to seek answers. One afternoon, Daniel sifted through boxes of archived files labeled Medical Unit 1980s. The yellowed papers crackled as he opened them, revealing records of patients, staff, and events during the base's wartime operations. His eyes caught a report from 1987, detailing a fierce artillery attack on the East Building. The document described how a sudden bombardment had caused the roof to collapse, trapping many inside. Among the casualties was Layla Hassan, a nurse assigned to the field hospital. According to the report, she was desperately trying to save wounded soldiers when the attack struck. 17 patients were confirmed dead, buried under rubble or burned beyond recognition. What chilled Daniel most was the description of Layla's body when it was finally recovered. Her eyes were wide open, staring in terror, and her mouth was frozen in a silent scream. A footnote mentioned a strange detail. Layla had been attempting to save one particular soldier, a high-ranking officer critical to the war effort, who was never found. Rumors had long circulated among the troops that this soldier's body had been secretly removed or hidden, but no official records confirmed his fate. As Daniel read further, the sense of tragedy deepened. Witnesses claimed Layla had called out for that soldier for days while trapped, refusing to abandon him. The trauma seemed to have broken her mind before she died. Daniel closed the file, a heavy weight pressing on his chest. The nurse from the night Layla was more than a ghost story. She was a tortured soul trapped by unfinished business. And room 3, the place everyone feared, was the site of her last, desperate fight for survival. Daniel felt a mix of fear and determination. If the spirits were restless, maybe they needed justice. Maybe he was meant to find the truth buried beneath years of silence. The nights at Al-Haima grew darker, not just in the absence of sunlight, but in the weight pressing on Daniel's mind. For several evenings in a row, exactly at 3 a.m., Daniel was jolted awake by a steady knocking at his door. The sound was slow and deliberate, 3 sharp knocks followed by silence. Each time he opened the door, the hallway was empty, silent except for the faint desert wind whispering through broken windows. It's nothing, Daniel tried to tell himself, some prank by the others, or my imagination. But the haunting persistence of the knocking gnawed at him. One night, Daniel confided in Corporal Reyes, a hardened soldier who had been stationed at Al-Haima longer than most. Reyes' expression grew serious. "You hear the white nurse's call?" "Huh," he said quietly. Daniel frowned. "You mean the ghost?" Reyes nodded slowly. "Yeah, I saw her once. The first time I did, I woke up with a bruise right here." He rolled up his sleeve to reveal a deep purple hand-shaped mark on his shoulder. "White nurse leaves her mark. Anyone who sees her gets touched. It's like a warning or a curse. I don't know what comes next, but it's not good." Daniel stared at the mark, a chill crawling up his spine. He touched his own shoulder, half expecting to find the same bruise. "Don't let her find you alone," Reyes warned. "She's looking for something, and whoever she marks might never be the same again." That night, Daniel lay awake, listening to the ticking clock, waiting for the knock. When it came, he didn't open the door, but the sense of being watched grew heavier. He knew the white nurse was near, and that whatever she wanted, it was only a matter of time before she came for him. The desert had a way of turning fierce without warning. That night, dark clouds of sand rolled in, swallowing the horizon like an advancing wall. The howling wind whipped against the old base, rattling windows and making the cracked walls groan. Daniel was on duty alone in the East Building. The storm had knocked out communication lines and buried the narrow roads in sand, cutting off all contact with the rest of the base. He lit a small lantern and settled into the cold, dimly lit corridor. The howling outside was a relentless roar, a reminder of the desert's unforgiving nature. Feeling uneasy, Daniel pushed open the door to room 3. The air inside was thick, heavy with the scent of dust and something metallic he couldn't quite place. As his eyes adjusted, Daniel blinked in disbelief. The room was filled with 17 hospital beds, all lined up neatly in rows. On each bed lay a figure wrapped tightly in white shrouds, still and silent. A low, mournful sound filled the room, faint moans and labored breathing, like the suffering of trapped souls. Daniel's heart pounded. He felt a presence behind him. Slowly, a pale figure emerged from the shadows, the white nurse. Her skin was ghostly white, eyes vacant but filled with sorrow. She moved closer, raising a hand that felt ice-cold, even from a distance. Her touch landed on Daniel's chest. The chill was unbearable, sinking deep into his bones. Her voice was barely a whisper, but filled with desperate urgency. "Save them, or stay with us." Daniel's mind raced. Was this a warning, a plea? The storm outside thundered like a beast as the weight of the spirits pressed down on him. He stumbled backward, almost falling, overwhelmed by the spectral vision. As the wind howled louder, Daniel knew one thing for certain. The restless souls trapped in room 3 were waiting for him to decide their fate. Haunted by the chilling encounter during the sandstorm, Daniel knew he needed answers, real ones, beyond whispers and rumors. If Layla's spirit was still trapped here, searching for justice, then he had to understand what really happened all those years ago. He sought out the one person rumored to have survived the chaos of that fateful day, an elderly military medic who had once worked at Al-Haima during the 1980s. His name was Dr. Ahmed Salim, a man now living quietly in a nearby town. After several attempts, Daniel arranged a meeting. The old man welcomed him into a modest home filled with faded photographs and relics from the past. Dr. Salim's eyes, clouded with age but sharp with memory, grew heavy as he began to speak. Layla was not like the others, he said softly. She was devoted to her patients beyond reason. When the attack came, she was trapped under the rubble for nearly 3 days. During that time, she could hear the dying cries of the wounded around her. The doctor paused, his voice trembling. She called out for a soldier, someone important, but no one knew who. They say she lost her mind in those hours, refusing to let go, begging for help that would never come. Daniel listened, the weight of the story settling on his shoulders. By the time rescuers found her, Layla was delirious. She did not recognize anyone and kept repeating the soldier's name. But when she finally passed, her eyes were wide open, mouth agape, frozen in fear. Dr. Salim shook his head. Since then, every new soldier stationed here at night hears her calling. Some see her walking the halls, others hear her whispers. She's trapped in a nightmare, seeking someone she could not save. Daniel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert wind. "Is there anything I can do?" he asked. The old Minek looked at him with weary eyes. "Layla wants justice. The man she tried to save. If you find the truth, maybe her spirit can rest." As Daniel left the house, the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky blood red. He knew the path ahead was dark and dangerous, but the haunting voices of Al-Haima had chosen him for a reason, and he would not turn away. The base had grown colder in the days following Daniel's visit with Dr. Salim. The shadows seemed to lengthen, and whispers echoed louder in the corridors. Daniel found himself glancing nervously over his shoulder, feeling the invisible eyes watching his every move. Then, without warning, Corporal Reyes vanished. It happened during a routine night shift. Reyes was assigned to patrol the east building alone, just as Daniel had before. But when the morning came, Reyes was gone. His bunk was untouched, his belongings still neatly arranged. The only traces were his hat and rifle, left eerily placed. In the center of room 3. A frantic search was launched immediately. Soldiers combed every inch of the base and the surrounding desert. The radio crackled with updates, but no sign of Reyes was ever found. Security cameras, though limited, were reviewed again and again. The footage showed nothing unusual until the very last moment, a faint white shadow appearing near Reyes, seemingly pulling him into the dark corner of the hallway. Then, static interference washed out the image completely. Daniel watched the footage with growing dread. The shadowy figure was unmistakable, the white nurse. His stomach churned as he realized Reyes's warnings had been true. The curse was real, and it was deadly. A deep bruise in the shape of a hand had appeared on Daniel's shoulder. The same mark Reyes had shown him weeks earlier. The chilling truth settled like a weight on Daniel's heart. The white nurse was not just a restless spirit, she was hunting, and Daniel was next. After Corporal Reyes' sudden disappearance, Daniel felt the walls closing in around him. The base once just a place of duty, had become a cage filled with unseen terrors. Sleep was no longer a refuge but a battleground. It began with a subtle sensation, a tingling on his right shoulder. At first, Daniel thought it was a muscle strain from the long hours of patrol, but when he looked in the mirror one morning, he froze. There it was, a deep purple bruise shaped like a handprint, vivid and unmistakable. It matched exactly the mark Reyes had shown him before vanishing. Panic clawed at Daniel's chest. He tried to scrub the bruise away, but it remained stubbornly darkening with each passing day. More unsettling were the voices. Whispers haunted his waking moments, soft murmurs brushing past his ears even when no one was near. Sometimes the voices were angry, sometimes pleading. Daniel's reflection betrayed him as well. In the cracked mirror of his quarters, he would catch glimpses of a different face, pale, with blank white eyes and a grotesque mouth torn into a sinister smile, standing just behind him. He spun around, but no one was there. The line between reality and nightmare blurred. Daniel knew the mark was more than a bruise. It was a curse, a warning, a countdown. Every day, the whispers grew louder, the face in the mirror more persistent, and Daniel feared that soon he would join Reyes lost to the darkness of room 3 forever. Daniel's heart pounded as the clock struck 3 a.m. The air in the east building was thick with tension, heavy with the ghosts of the past. Tonight he knew he had to confront the source of his torment. Room 3. Taking a deep breath, Daniel stepped into the corridor, flashlight in hand. The weak fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long, wavering shadows on the cracked walls. Every step echoed like a drumbeat in the silence. As he reached room 3, the door creaked open by itself, revealing a scene both familiar and surreal. The room had transformed. The walls glowed with an eerie blue light, and the steady beep of medical monitors filled the air. The beds, once empty, were now lined with the faint outlines of figures wrapped in white sheets. From the shadows, Layla Hassan appeared. Her ghostly form shimmered in the dim light, eyes filled with sorrow and determination. "You must finish what I started," she whispered, voice trembling. "Find the man who abandoned us. Justice must be served." Daniel's mind reeled as the room shifted into a haunting vision. He saw a high-ranking officer, cold and unyielding, locking the doors and fleeing as the bombardment raged. His betrayal had doomed Layla and her patients. Layla's spirit reached out to Daniel, pleading for his help to expose the truth and lay the restless souls to rest. As the vision faded, Daniel felt a newfound resolve burning within him. The nightmare was far from over, but now he had a mission: to uncover the secrets buried beneath Al-Haima and to deliver justice for those forgotten in the desert sands. Daniel buried himself in research, determined to unearth the secrets that had long been hidden beneath the shifting sands of Al-Haima. Days and nights blurred as he pored over military archives, testimonies, and classified reports, desperate to find any mention of the officer who had abandoned Layla and her patients. What he discovered shocked him. The officer in question had not only survived the attack, he had climbed the ranks after the war, becoming a powerful politician with deep connections in the military and government. His name was whispered in the halls of power, untouchable and shielded by influence. Daniel's heart pounded as he realized the scope of the cover-up. The truth about that fateful night was deliberately erased, buried alongside the bodies in room 3. But Layla's spirit was relentless. Daniel's nights became plagued by nightmares, blood seeping from the walls of his quarters, phantom footsteps pacing just outside his door, and the chilling sound of Layla's voice calling from the darkness. Sleep eluded him as the haunting intensified. His body weakened, his mind fraying under the weight of the curse. Yet, through the torment, Daniel's resolve only hardened. He knew that exposing the truth was the only way to free the trapped souls and to save himself. The battle was no longer just against ghosts in the desert. It was against the powerful forces determined to keep the past buried forever. Daniel's decision to confront the past brought him face to face with danger far beyond the supernatural. As he prepared to meet the powerful officer, now a high-ranking politician, he knew the stakes had never been higher. Their meeting was tense. Daniel laid out the evidence he had gathered, demanding justice for Layla and the 17 soldiers left to die in the East Building. But before the conversation could escalate, a chilling event stopped them both. Suddenly, the politician collapsed, falling from the balcony of his office. His eyes were wide open, frozen in terror, his mouth agape, as if trying to scream. Daniel, understood instantly. Layla had taken justice into her own hands. The curse was lifted, the restless spirits finally at peace. Years later, long after Daniel had left the military, he often awoke at exactly 3 a.m. in the still darkness. His old flashlight flickered on. He smiled, knowing that Layla's spirit was still there, watching over room 3, guarding it, as she always had. The desert was silent once more, but the promise to remember the lost souls would never fade.
Thank you for following.